All right, welcome everybody. Happy October. My name is John Sandville, and I'm here to talk to you with Ryan Ogrechak about how to use data to power your marketing strategy and drive results. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is data within your Listrak platform and outside of it in order to help generate more revenue within your Listrak campaigns and outside of those campaigns. So like I mentioned, my name is John Sandville. I'm an account manager here at Listrak. Been with Listrak for a little under 7 years, started out on the sales side and moved over to account management about 6 years ago or so.
My name's Ryan Ogrechak. I'm an account director here at Listrak. I've been with Listrak for over 10 years now, all within the client services and account management team. My role as an account director is to oversee a team of account managers and really help them with all the programs that they work with, trying to generate as much revenue as we can, and also focus heavily on list acquisition, whether it be email or from the SMS side. And especially as now we're in October, pretty much full steam ahead into the holiday time period here, looking at data and how data can really play a key role within segmentation, also within personalization features within Listrak and outside of Listrak as well. So we'll try to put some of the pieces of the puzzle together here today on how data can help you during this holiday season.
Absolutely. And at Listrak, we are delivering results for over 1,000 retailers by providing best-in-class, cross-channel, behavioral, and predictive marketing strategies and solutions that drive customer engagement, revenue, and loyalty. And if you're a little unfamiliar with Listrak, our solutions are built specifically for e-commerce, and our organization is made up of experts that really act as an extension of your team to help you from implementation to optimization and beyond. We pride ourselves in our attention to detail and overall client satisfaction, earning an industry-leading Net Promoter Score that outpaces other leading marketing technology providers. So some quick housekeeping here before we get into the nuts and bolts of the presentation. The webinar is being recorded and we will share the recording with you later today in a follow-up email. If you have questions as I go, please post them to the Q&A panel and we'll be happy to answer them. All right, let's get started.
First of all, looking at some of the goals of the session here today, and really I would say we have two main call outs that we want to focus on throughout today's session. And then we'll get into some basics from that point on. But number one, we want to see what access when it comes to data is actually available within Listrak currently. What do you have access to? There's a lot of information, that we're going to review today. And we've also understand too that data may not be the most exciting topic. However, it's probably one of the most important topics, again, as we approach holiday, that you will talk about during this time of the year. And you don't know that about your data until you actually see what access that you have within the application. So it's one, finding out what access you have, and then also how do you use it as well. Here's an interesting quote that John and I saw earlier on in the year, and we think it really does a good job showing of all the different places, whether it be browsing patterns, social media, purchase behavior, but whatever activity that any of your customers and subscribers are taking on, that data that's being collected is going to really be at the core of any successful marketing strategy, as Michael Brenner points out here in this quote. And I think really does a good job kind of setting the tone of what we're going to be trying to get across here today.
So to start, let's talk about what data we have access to. So if you're not there yet and you have access to the Listrak platform, I would encourage you to log in now because Ryan and I will be taking you to a number of different places within the app. So take a few seconds and log into the platform. But before we get into that, when we talk about exploring your data, you have access to several different areas of Listrak in order to do so, and we'll try to touch on each and every one of these today, including your data summary all the way down to the file import summary, and we'll talk about some other data sources available to you. So let's start with the data summary. So in order to get there, hover over the Solutions tab on the left and click Data Summary. What this is showing you is the overall e-commerce revenue that we have received, but this is only showcasing for orders that we have an email address tied to. So a couple things to point out about this screen. In the top left is where you can select your merchant. So if things look a little bit off, just make sure that you're selecting the correct merchant in the top left. And this is also showing you the e-commerce revenue for all orders that are placed that have an email address tied to it. That's our unique identifier that we use here at Listrak. So if the numbers seem a little bit off, they could be due in part to that. And it's important to note here that, again, we're looking at overall e-commerce revenue, all orders, average order value, and all of your customers are down below. All of those recent orders are down below, and you can change your time frame there in the top right. So a good place in order to kind of get a quick snapshot as to how your e-commerce revenue is doing year over year and utilize some comparisons. But take a note of the navigation on the left, because from there we want to start talking about what we call the contact card. And in order to get there, you're going to select the customers option on the left. Once you do that, you'll see another dashboard. You'll see the page reload, and down below you'll be able to select an email address of a recent order, where you'll be able to pull up this information here about a customer of yours. And this is one of those hidden aspects of the platform that we as account managers enjoy utilizing because of the amount of data that we can find on specific subscribers here. So you'll note that you can take a look at their total spend, number of orders, AOV, average reorder days, all there at the top. But down below, you'll start to see some more granular data where you can look at recent orders or recent emails that they received, some activity that they have within your account. And it really provides a great snapshot of several different areas of opportunity that might help you when deciding on segmentation to use or strategies for certain campaigns. And we'll get into that in a bit. But as you look at this contact card, start to identify some of the gaps that you might see within a few of the customers that you may click on. For example, here, we'll come back to the average reorder days and number of orders, but some really good information here to help drive some decision making when it comes to segmentation, but also influences some campaign strategies that we'll get into in a bit.
As John mentioned, we are in the data summary currently, and as the name would suggest, much of your data is stored here, including all of your e-commerce data. And really, you can begin brainstorming ideas on who to target specifically. So John and I are big fans of category and subcategory recurring automated campaigns, which we're going to get into in a little bit more detail later on. But this is an example of where you can see for all of your product data that's being collected, how many of your products actually fall under a specific category or subcategory. And this then allows you to be able to start notating, you know what, we have a good amount of products there that we could probably look at the purchasers of those products and start setting up some automation. So really, this section of the application can be an outstanding visual of what's possible in your marketing efforts. And many of our top clients and programs spend time here in developing strategies with their account manager on campaigns that they would like to deploy next. You do have the ability as well within the data summary to actually drill down into the individual products. And there's a few use cases here that maybe you've experienced over time that I just want to call out. It could be things like, why is a product appearing in my email with the wrong pricing? Or potentially, why does this product that is now appearing here in this email for recommendations, why doesn't it have the correct image in there that I thought that it had? Or perhaps, why is a product appearing in email recommendations at all? Those are questions that, as account managers, we hear quite a bit. And what it allows you to do is kind of do some troubleshooting here on your own, and we can assist you with this too. But when you have access to the individual products, you can drill down in and see some of the important details here that is being sent to Listrak for all of these products. And a specific area that I want to call out is a highlighted section, which is the date that it was last modified. So if you have made some updates, maybe to product images or some product pricing, However, the date modified still shows some time in the past. That lets you know that actually we haven't received any updated files for that product in the recent past. And that could be a reason why some of that information isn't appearing the way that you thought that it would. One final call out I do want to have here at the product level is Listrak does typically keep old SKUs on hand, and that's why you're going to see some of those might be inactive. The reason that we keep them, however, is to really paint the full picture of all of the products that a customer would have purchased. And that's why we keep it. So if we would remove some of those SKUs, then it would also remove some of that purchase history for some of those customers. And we want to tell the full story on all of their activity, just like the example that we looked at there earlier with the customer John showed in the contact card. They had 8 purchases. It's important to know what all of those purchases are, the SKUs that they bought, even if they are no longer active. It helps build out the profile of each of the customers within your list. Moving on to the contact data summary, let's move a little bit of outside of just transactional data. There's a lot of other good data that we know is being imported into Listrak on a regular basis, but it's important for you to know how much of it actually do you have of that data. Is it even worth your while trying to target that group or audience? And that's where if you go to the contact data summary, you're able to get a list count. And that's usually a much more effective tactic in seeing how many contacts are available that meets that criteria, rather than just going to the audiences section and kind of blindly putting some of those queries together, and you don't know what some of that data is going to show you or represent. So it can be a time savings play there for you on that one. We do obviously have different data types available within Listrak. Usually what we see is the most impactful is text or checkbox or numeric. Those are kind of the 3 that are, I'd say, most popular. We do have radio button as an option as well. And overall, when we look at some text-based fields here, one thing that I would mention there as a call out is we do aggregate capitalization and lowercase and combine them together. So if we were to say, like, what city are we from here? Where's Listrak headquarters, right? And we would say Lancaster, PA. And in the case of Lancaster, if it's a capital letter L, or then maybe if John would type in a lowercase L for Lancaster, Listrak would still deem John and I to be from the same place, same location, even though I might have capitalized it and John used lowercase. So we aggregate all that data together to keep it as accurate as we can. The file import summary shows files that are coming through and when, based on a timing perspective. If you move to this area and you do not see any files here at all, don't worry, that's okay. What that probably means then is that all of the files from a products, a customers, and orders, and an order items area that we might see in the screen here, if you don't see those on your screen, it probably means that you're using one of Listrak's integrations, either as a module or an app, and those are coming over automatically, and those would not be displayed here within the file import summary. What it would show, however, is any supplemental files that you might be sending over to us, things like maybe an automated feed for a point of sale system, or maybe some loyalty data. So that could be sent over as a supplemental file feed, and then that would be displayed here. You can see the icon there that shows alerts, kind of like an alarm, I guess, or kind of like a bell there. And we recommend that you definitely put your email address in there. Your account manager's email address will be in there too. This is the way to send a notification that if we haven't received a file within a certain time frame, usually 24 hours, we will send you a notification there letting you know that, so you can make any adjustments that are needed. Here's where you can see a visual of the data that would be coming over to Listrak in the file feed, and then the profile fields here that are available within Listrak to make mapping up of that data very easy to see as well. So I know many of you maybe are part of working with a program or your current retailer that you're working with, and maybe you weren't a part of the original onboarding process. That is probably the case for many of you. And so you might be, again, saying to yourself, why are we sending the data that we are? Why is this piece of information mapping to this area of Listrak? And here within the file import summary, you can see full visibility into that. And as you would probably expect, any tweaks or updates that you want to make, you can certainly do it here and reset all of those mappings that you wish. I would say there, just maybe work with your account manager or technical support team, just so we can lend a hand there. Since the data is so important, we want to make sure that any campaigns that are tied to it would still be able to function as you'd want them to.
Absolutely, good call. So when we start talking about what other data do you have access to, obviously you all may know this already, you have a lot. You have a lot of different areas, from your order management system to social media platforms and a loyalty program, all to pull data from and into Listrak.
Yeah, point of sale system is a big one. We definitely would say if you're collecting purchase data in a brick and mortar location, your subscribers, they should have that full profile available, regardless if they've ordered online or if they've ordered in store. That makes for an excellent customer, as we all know. And all that data should be aggregated together, which we can do. So we can certainly accept that information. Order management system, social media platforms for sure. Catalog and direct mail. John and I see more and more of catalog and direct mail all the time here, especially throughout this year. That's becoming ever more popular. Same thing with loyalty programs, maybe some information that you would be sending or want to collect when it comes to CRM or any CDP programs. And preference center and opt-down page is something that we're going to get into here in a little bit more detail shortly. I think it's also important though to call out, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, a couple of different import options. You might all be familiar with the one-time import that's available, but we can also collect flat files that I touched on a little bit earlier. Certainly we can receive information through API calls, so you can work with our API to send that data over to us as well. Same thing with recurring imports. So there's a lot of ways that you'd be able to get this information into Listrak. I think kind of the two keys here would be is, what other data do you have that you think would make a big impact within your email program, your SMS program, that you think you wanted a part of the application? That's part one. And then part two would be, what is the best method for you and your team in order to send that to us, ideally on an ongoing basis? But if it's a one-time kind of import or catch up, as you can see, we can do that as well.
So you've got this data coming from so many different places, not only what you have currently in Listrak, but also maybe outside of Listrak that we just talked about, getting into the platform in a bunch of different ways. But how can we actually use it within broadcast sense? And from my point of view, I think I'm one of the only people that still plays Wordle. I know that seemed to be a phenom that went on for a while, but has since died down. But to me, figuring out what segments to build is a lot like trying to figure out the Wordle. You don't really know all the data that you have, all of the answers. You might know a few of the letters, you might know a few of the levers that you want to pull, whatever that might be. And so if we go back to this contact card, here's why it's important. And it's important because it can help us establish a good, at least base level understanding of all of the data that we have access to in order to be utilized within segmentation. So here, I want to call out that average reorder days or number of orders, right? We have all of this information, but how can we actually utilize it? Maybe we understand that by looking at a few of these customers, that the average reorder days may be a little bit longer than we think. And so if we're only looking at folks who have purchased in the last 3 months, 6 months, we may not be hitting folks that typically buy from us once a year, once every 9 months, whatever that might be. Folks tend to have some sort of schedule or cadence as to when that they will shop for certain items. And I think we can have a misunderstanding of that by really trying to focus on trying to convert one-time purchasers to two-time purchasers or more within a certain time frame, even though they may just not be ready quite yet to make that purchase.
And that's why, here, John, I would just say, when we look at those number of orders being 8, what if 6 of those 8 were in store? Right? That's why supplemental file feeds there, like collecting point of sale data, is really important. Because when we look at this contact and see that they have 8 orders, that's going to be much different than if they had 2, because we're only looking at online data. It doesn't share with us the whole picture, like maybe that supplemental feed can be from the point of sale system.
Right, good point. And when I look at this, one of the first things that I see is the preferred send time as well. A lot of our clients are sending emails out in the morning, right? But a lot of subscribers, think of yourself and your own shopping. I don't do a lot of the shopping during the day until both of my kids go down to bed. Then I'm able to actually spend some time to myself and do some shopping. So looking at that preferred send time could help influence sometimes we want to test out in the holiday season. So how do we utilize this data within broadcast sends? We just talked about segments. Well, how do we actually build them? And so under filtering, you go to contacts and look at audiences. That's how you're going to get to this screen here. We will see a number of the different options that you have available. You can look at previously built audiences and build on top of that. You'll see contact behavior, profile fields, and system fields. Notating the difference between profile fields and system fields, keep in mind that a profile field group is data that can be added to Listrak through imports. You'll find a lot of information there, including browse behavior or also any outside data that you have that you import into Listrak that you want to utilize within your sends will be found under profile field groups, while a system field is a field that Listrak will automatically update, such as a last open date, last click date, send date, items like that. Some of that outside data will all be utilized within profile field groups. So as we get into that, an item that I believe is often not utilized, or a segment that I'm not seeing a lot of my clients start to use, but I want to start to push because of how important it could be, especially this holiday season. So if you go to profile field groups and click FA customer metrics, if you want to know what FA stands for, you can ask your account manager and get into that. But the field there under that drop down I want you to look at is all of these items that we were able to take a look at under that contact card are available for segmentation. So not only can that contact card help you define what segments do you want to use, but here under FA customer metrics, you'll actually be able to utilize those fields, one of which is a projected order. So as a part of your active segmentation, you may be looking at folks who maybe recently opened or clicked or subscribed or even purchased. But are you adding folks who have a projected order date utilizing our algorithms and their buying behaviors we know may order sometime over the next couple of days, couple weeks, couple months? And as you start to get ready for holidays, I'm sure you already have, utilizing that projected order date can help take some subscribers who you may not typically include in your active audience sends and be able to include them because you know that they may buy once a year around this time of year.
Preference centers and opt-down pages, we very briefly mentioned that earlier on, and it is a very popular option. If I had to venture to guess, I'd probably say over 50% of you
At least
probably on the webinar today have a preference center or an opt-down page. It's a conversation that we have as account managers on a recurring basis as well. There's a lot of positives around it. I mean, subscribers tell you what they want, right? It's just like a storefront where they are volunteering that information. And if they went into a brick and mortar store and you were the sales associate and you just specifically asked them, how can I help you today? What are you looking for? It's really that interaction in a digital sense. And that's what a preference center is doing. It's collecting all sorts of interests. Like we said, it can also collect some key pieces of information like birthday, which will fuel birthday campaigns, maybe who you're actually buying for, or even certain occasions of why you might be looking, potentially buying as well. So there's a lot of positives about it and a lot of well and good intentions to use that data. The challenge has always been, though, with preference centers is getting contacts to fill it out. John and I would probably say that on the high end, the amount of subscribers actually fill out a preference center on the high end is probably about 10%. Now, you could say, and I've heard of the idea of, Well, why don't we just pre-check all of the selections instead? So that way we're kind of starting with everybody and then they can filter down. The problem with that is you don't actually know which of those contacts are interested in those topics. And that might actually increase the unsubscribe rate. So you may not want to go in that path either. Also, working with preference centers and opt-downs, it can be a little bit difficult to manage. So if, for example, you know that an individual only wants to hear from you once a week, how do you know what message you should be sending to them during the course of the week? Is it your top sale of the week? Is it maybe a new arrival? Because again, they only want to hear from you once. So what is the best approach and best method to take there? So again, a lot of good with preference centers and opt-down pages, but again, challenge has been getting them to fill it out. And then after the fact, once you have some of that data, it can be a little bit challenging to manage. Looking at zero and first party data, however, we can really use some additional data to make the campaign even more effective, making up for maybe that 10% that actually fills out the preference center. So in this case, what we're looking at is the example of fly fishing, as we saw in the last preference center, where somebody may have said, yes, I have an interest in fly fishing. Well, let's expand that out a little bit more. Going back to your physical store location, like I gave a little bit earlier, maybe it's not just that they told you that they were interested in fly fishing. Maybe you could also see what they were looking at, or potentially even looking in your order management system to see what did this person buy previously, right? And you can leverage some of that data too. And that's what we're doing here in this example of building out some greater segmentation, where it's not just individuals who said, yes, tell me about fly fishing, but also what about adding in those individuals that also purchased from the fly fishing category, which, by the way, as we talked about, is why you want to have that data be clean. So it allows you then to be able to target them later on based on that. And then adding even another layer to it, what about those individuals that not only told us they wanted to learn about fly fishing or previously purchased fly fishing from that category? How about if they browsed it, either as the last category or the most browsed category? And when you combine all of those together, you can see the increase in the audience that we would be sending to, and it makes it a much more effective campaign here. So I definitely encourage everybody, use that zero and first party data that you have to the max. And I think it'll make, again, for a much more effective campaign.
And I know what you might be thinking when you look at this screen and see in this specific example, an increase of only 1,000 subscribers. Well, we mentioned before the amount of people who may not be filling out preference centers that we know are interested in fly fishing, but by utilizing all of the different data points that we have in order to try to hit everybody, we're giving ourselves a greater probability of sending a campaign to someone who's interested in fly fishing by casting a wider net. So that's a bad example with the fishing here, but we're just trying to increase our odds of getting the most interested subscribers to receive the campaign that we're sending out.
We've covered data with segmentation and audiences, which has really been important. And so is using that data in creative that you can put in subject lines or even some pre-header text. So any data that you pump into Listrak can be dynamically added into creative, whether it's in the actual creative elements, like you might be using the composer tool, or again, you might be within the subject lines or pre-header text. You can use a personalization control panel here that's shown to dynamically inject that information right there. So think about all the options that you can really use here. When personalization, whenever you hear that, a lot of times you think of first name. Yes, you could definitely put that in there. Location is a pretty popular one. So if you give a city a call out, that really resonates with a lot of subscribers too, when they see their location in the subject line. Any store data, you could also put in maybe the last SKU that they would have looked at, maybe category that they would have looked at or browsed. So there's all sorts of different options within the personalization control panel to really make it a more attractive campaign, definitely increase the amount of engagement. And again, it shows the importance of data, not just in segmentation and building out audiences, but as we looked here, also within the personalization portion of the program too.
And as you're all probably starting to hear how important data is, and we've talked about the accessibility and how to use it, now we're starting to get into why it's important when it comes to driving some of the success of your campaigns, right? So we talked segmentation, now we're talking about legitimately utilizing this data in campaigns in order to help drive personalization. As we know, is a goal of a lot of our retailers, is not only to increase revenue, but also to increase personalization to help cut down on unsubscribes and generate more interest in your program overall. And this is a great way to do that.
If you've worked with John and I at all, you know what both of us, and me in particular, think about this tool here, which is the product block tool within Composer. We've really seen it be a huge time saver in putting together emails for the programs that we work with. You do need price, you need sale price, you need images. And again, that's going to be coming through that file feed that we talked about, or maybe even the integration that you have in place with Listrak. So it is important that that data is in place, but if it is, then you can really use the product block tool to display any products that you'd wish, show all of the relevant details that go along with that product. And again, making email curation a lot more simple of a process. And I would just say it's probably a goal maybe to add more images to emails, because just in general, usually when we see the number of images within an email increase, it also helps increase the click rate. Averages that we've seen this year at Listrak within Composer-based messages, it's about 13 images. And I'm not saying 13 is kind of the gold standard of what you need to do, but what I am saying is take that into consideration what you are currently doing with your emails. And if you have less than 13, maybe increase that a little bit. And the product block tool in Composer definitely allows you to be able to do that.
But how do we know that what we're doing and utilizing the data that we have is actually working? And if you were with us in San Diego, this was the slide where I told a story about my 2-year-old thinking that she was doing something good by putting all of her trash in the shower instead of the trash can. I'll save you all that story, but essentially what we want to be able to do now, once we can start utilizing this data in our campaigns, is understand whether or not it's working. So under analytics, if you go to the message history report, on the left, you'll see a little thumbnail of your message. Underneath that with a magnifying glass, where it will then take you to this screen where you can select between the click map and the heat map. The heat map is very cool, but I find myself using the click map a little bit more often. You can see why here on the left. So as we start to look at the success of campaigns, it's curious to know, all right, is the data that we're utilizing within our campaigns being useful or not? You can see in this example how the navigation at the top from new arrivals, women's, men's, and seasonal, you can see how many have generated how many clicks and revenue to help drive some decisions, right? So in this case, looks like new arrivals isn't generating as much interest as we thought that it might. And so we may want to shift towards just showcasing men's, women's, and seasonal to help increase engagement on those. Or maybe we're going to replace new arrivals with blog or top sellers, or some clients that I work with have portions of their site that are there to just communicate sales or coupons that they have access to in order to help eliminate coupons and these discounts and offers getting out to other third-party sites. And so we can start playing around with the data and see, all right, if we utilized first name in this field and here's how we used it, did that help generate an increased sales and increase engagement versus not doing it? Or was utilizing green better than blue, whatever that might be? This click map is a great way to help understand the performance of your campaigns. And we talked a lot, especially at the beginning of this presentation, around data, where it's coming from and ensuring that it's clean. And one of the areas Ryan discussed was all around product recommendations. And so if the data is coming from a place or is in a place where it may need cleaned up or hasn't been modified in a long time, you'll definitely and almost immediately see that start to reflect itself within your product recommendations. Items will start showing up that you probably haven't seen in years, or you know are out of stock. Whatever that might be, the data that is coming into Listrak is so important, and understanding and making sure that it's clean is so important because of the use here because if we want to showcase product recommendations based on preferred categories or products that haven't been recently purchased or recommended, these are all great items to use within the personalized portion of building out a recipe. But it's so important to make sure that that data is clean so that we don't run into any issues this holiday season showcasing products that we shouldn't. So like I had mentioned, when building out some logic within your product recommendations, try clicking on that personalized button for maybe a few aspects of product recommendations that you haven't seen before. But we'll just want to make sure your data is in a good point or a good place before we do that to make sure that nothing seems out of whack. So how do we take the data that you're currently using? We talked about the cleanliness of it, where it's coming from, making sure that it's clean, utilizing it in broadcast campaigns, but you also have a lot of triggers running. So what can we do to help increase the use of our data within our triggered campaigns? And I'll let Ryan get into that here.
Yeah, how many of you are familiar with webhooks? And I can't see your hands anyway, since this is a webinar, but if you're not raising your hand, don't feel bad, because if you did raise your hand, that probably indicates that you're more technical in nature with your position, and great for you. In general though, webhooks, you can pass Listrak specific data to third parties using webhooks. There's a few other use cases, like you can utilize data from Listrak, maybe in some custom reporting that you might want to do. You can send an order thank you message to Facebook Messenger. You can do payload data, which payload data is essentially like cart contents, and that could be sent via app push or maybe SMS, for example. So all of these things can be done through the webhooks portion of our application, which is actually through Journey Hub in Listrak. And if you're not as familiar with Journey Hub, I recommend that you dive in there, talk to your account manager about it, because there's a lot of great usage for Journey Hub. And this just even includes the data portion beyond even some of the email creative that might be in place. Updating a contact profile on link click. We discussed the struggle again of getting contacts to complete preference centers. We talked about zero and first party data. In this case, why not ask for it in another way? Just ask them via email. And based on those clicks, they can actually be saved in profile fields that would allow you then to leverage it for segmentation later on. So you can build that wider net that John talked about earlier, and it's creating a higher interest level of all those contacts that would actually receive those emails. Other use cases for this, I would say, would be surveys we've seen, maybe in a case where they want to opt down but not fully out. We've seen that be pretty successful. Maybe even gender that they're looking for, or even specific products. Like I've seen some retailers, if they sell dresses, they might show 3 dresses and say, which is your favorite? And they start building out a profile of that contact based on their selection within the email. So again, it's just a really good opportunity for further segmentation. And again, creating that wider net of contacts to receive those messages.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of retailers start to utilize this and maybe giving folks a chance to opt down for a certain amount of time or for a certain holiday. If they have a specific reason that they may not want to receive emails or campaigns for that holiday. This updating the contact profile based on the links that are clicked in an email is a great way to help do that.
And then subscribe and unsubscribe contacts in Journey Hub. So again, here's another call out for Journey Hub that's helping manage data, just like the webhooks availability was too. So data management is in Journey Hub, definitely is an efficiency play here. And where you might want to subscribe or unsubscribe contacts would be, let's talk about the case of maybe re-engagement or a win-back. Now they can be removed at the end of that series automatically if you wish to do so. So if they're not engaged at all, they've received a reactivation campaign, they're still not interacting. The question then becomes, do you want to keep them on the list? Maybe you do, but if you don't, now with one step within Journey Hub, you'll be able to remove them automatically. You can also action in a triggered campaign. So for example, like within shopping cart abandonment, I've seen some individuals actually add them to the master list at times as well. Maybe even if they sign up for one brand and you automatically want to sign them up for another brand across kind of your merchant portfolio, if you will, that becomes much more of a realistic opportunity now too, in an automated way. So again, great usage within Journey Hub and efficiency plays within data management.
Absolutely. If you have any questions about that, please reach out to your account managers. I know some of these items are relatively new to Journey Hub as we continue to roll out optimizations and improvements to that. So obviously you have data in a lot of different places, not just in Listrak. So how can we start to utilize those other channels, not only within Listrak, but also utilizing the data in Listrak elsewhere? So let's talk about the data export tool. And I know we're going a little bit long here on time here, but I want to make sure that we talk about this because of how important it can be for your business. So if you go to under manage, you can click new integrations and create a way in order to help export data out to other folks. I know you may have a CDP or maybe an outside CRM that you may want to utilize some Listrak data and feed into. Utilizing the data export tool will allow you to take some basic data that you have within Listrak and filter it out to that. So don't be afraid, ask us if you have any questions on how to utilize the data export tool in order to take some of that data and utilize it outside of Listrak. But in that same vein, you may want to sync some audiences with Facebook. So as you all may know, or Meta, maybe they've officially made the move to Meta by the time we're talking here. So it's important to understand that you can take certain audiences within Listrak and sync it out to Facebook and create lookalike audiences based on that. So say you have an active audience of folks who have recently engaged, and you want to create lookalike audiences within Facebook for use of lead ads or maybe some product ads that you place there. Maybe you want to utilize some of those audiences that we built earlier around folks who have a projected order date of the next couple weeks, but you want to target them and hit them on social as well and serve up Facebook or Instagram ads, or you want to create a lookalike audience and target them. This is a great way to do that. Same thing with Google. We all understand that there's a huge market there within Google. When you look at Google Analytics, CPC or organic are all two huge revenue drivers for clients. So how can you utilize Listrak audiences within that? Well, in a very similar way that I just talked about with Facebook, being able to take some of these audiences and take some of the data that you have in Listrak. Maybe you have loyalty provider data synced into Listrak. You want to take those loyalists, sync them out to your other channels for use within your advertising. You can do that. There's a lot of creative ways that we talked about, not only in this presentation, but maybe you've talked about with your account manager for use in these other channels. So don't be afraid to ask your account manager if you have any questions about that. So to recap here, we talked about a lot of different things, right? We talked about that there's a lot of data flowing into Listrak from a lot of different sources and how we understand what access you have and then how to utilize that. What can you utilize within segmentation and what can you utilize within your campaigns in order to make sure that you're utilizing that data and that it's working. We talked about that. We talked about the visibility within Listrak as to what is being received, so that if you want to go in and make some changes to data files, whatever that might be, we're happy to help with that. And hopefully now you learned how to do that yourself.
Yeah, there's a lot of efficiencies here too. So we know that data is a topic, again, that you can really get into the weeds with what's happening here. But if they are in check and the data is the way that you'd want it to be, it definitely makes using some other features like the product block that we looked at, product recommendations, and recurring automated campaigns, much more viable for you. And it'll just save you a lot of time here moving forward. Just again, overall, use Listrak as that hub to feed critical data to other channels. We know Listrak's roots have been in email. We obviously have SMS available, browser push, app push, many different channels, but we can also feed those other channels too, because since Listrak collects all that data, allow the application to feed that out to the other areas where you would see it be beneficial. And in general, the more data that can be used in Listrak, it's just going to help your program. Just like we saw in the beginning with the quote there at the start, and it's just going to allow you to sell more customers that you already have, gain more new customers as well, and no better time to do that than this holiday season that we're in the middle of right now here in October. So thank you all for joining us today. We just really enjoy the topic of data because it's so important to your program. We know all of you are very busy, so thanks for taking time out to join us. Any questions at all that maybe we didn't get to through the chat here, we apologize for that. We would like to answer them for you. And I'm also sure that your account managers would be able to help you out as well. So thanks again for everybody hopping on today, and hope you have a great day and a tremendous holiday season.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.